All right, let's start recording this thing. So as all of you know, I am in the process of trying to get myself in a place where I can sit down and I can do one of these coding interviews from one of the FANG companies. So FANG is an acronym for those who are not familiar. FANG stands for Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. In order to hire developers at the scale that they need to hire and the caliber that they need to hire, and the fact that they're not looking to waste money on getting someone trained up only to figure out that they're not, able to hack it. So there's this wonderful thing called the technical interview, sometimes called the coding interview. Now, I've been in IT for over 20 years. I've been a systems administrator. I've sat in the C-suite. I've done all of this really cool stuff, but I've never really been a true developer. That's like the one thing that, for one reason or another, it wasn't something that I did as part of my career growth. I was more focused on making sure that you could do repeatable installs of Windows Server, or setting up web servers and, hosting web applications and things like that. Like my life has been dedicated to the systems administration side of things in IT. That's a completely different world than being an application developer. To be a dev and to do it at the scale that the big tech companies do it, you have to have a very unique screening process that doesn't exist in other industries in the way that it does in tech. And I've heard stories about the coding interview, and I thought, I'm never going to have to deal with that. Eventually I'm just going to find myself in the C-suite. Maybe I might start a few tech companies. But I got to a point where, long story short, I'm no longer working. I'm looking for work. So I got invited to a coding interview for IBM, and I thought, oh, okay, well, how hard could this be? I'm going in for DevOps. I know how to script. That's the one thing that I did learn in terms of like development, is I learned how to script. I'd say that makes you like a higher end systems administrator if you know how to script. Anyone can install Windows Server, but not everybody can script an install. Not everybody can script the provisioning process. Not everyone can manage an Active Directory through PowerShell and or using scripting, right? I can, because I spent a lot of time developing those skills over the last 20 or so years. I taught myself Python. I can really do something with this. I finally taught myself something that I can do things with. Then I go and I go to sign up for the interview, and they use HackerRank to do the first part of the coding interview. And I just sat there and I must have spun my wheels for close to 4 hours trying to figure out how to solve one of those questions. And you should be able to do 3 of them a day. I sat down and I started doing a bunch of these on a couple of different sites. I was only able to ever successfully get one on HackerRank. I also tried, what else did I try? I tried LeetCode. LeetCode, those ones were a little bit easier, but like I still just, I swung and I missed on every single one of those. And then finally I found Codewars, which I remember somebody a while ago was using Codewars for their for their technical interview process, and I thought, oh, okay, well, hey, let me give this a go. I'm a couple of problems in, and I finally got to a point where I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. But it's worth noting that I'm still on the easiest level, and it's incredibly stressful to try to learn something when your ability to eat is tied to it. Kept feeling like I was hitting a wall. There was like some imaginary immovable force that was pushing against me and pushing against my progress. And I couldn't figure it out. It was driving me crazy. Like, the way they ask these questions are incredibly difficult. You really, 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 really have to think. And I think I figured this one out. You choose your language. So I chose Python version 3.11. So, but you can select a bunch of other languages. So when you do these coding interviews, a lot of them, they'll let you choose your language. So my go-to is Python because that's just, I'm the most familiar with it. I can do more stuff with it. Python is my love language. Let's just say that. So what they do is they give you a prompt, and then here's your little box where you can write your code. And then down here, it shows you the test cases. A test case in the actual tech world, these test cases are used when people are working on software and they make a change and then they push that change up to, wherever, to staging, and then they can run tests. They can even run it in the code pipeline too, but wherever they deploy it to, you can run tests against it before you make it go live. And those tests will go through and they'll tell you if a change you made broke anything. We have here 3 tests, and these are basic test cases. So the way that these coding interview and the way that like these particular sites work is you have your unit tests down here, and that's how they grade you. So if all the tests pass, then you did it right. You did what they were asking for. So think of these instructions like a scope or a specification. I sat down this morning to do this, and full disclosure, and I have to look at my phone for this. I started working on this at like 8 this morning. It's now 2:36 p.m. Pacific time. I just now got to a point where I can submit this thing. Now you might notice there's nothing in here, and I wanted to reset this because I wanted you to see my process and see how I'm thinking, how I go about this. In school, I was terrible. Dropped out, got my GED, and I went into the working world. I did go to school. I went to college, but I was I studied history. I didn't study computers. But computers was something that I did for work during the summers. So I already had like a really good technical foundation. A lot of things came together and had to come together right for me to get to where I am today. I had a really hard time in school. I can't even really begin to describe how difficult it was for me. I had to repeat a grade. I had to repeat the 8th grade. And then on top of having to repeat the 8th grade, I also got transferred into a different school for better or for worse. So I had a lot going on in my head. I was not a model student. My mom moved us out to Castleton, which for my upstate New York people, you guys know where that is. For everyone else that's not from the capital region, you don't know where that is. When school would first start in like September, if they had the windows open in the classroom, you could smell the fertilizer on the fields. You could smell the buffalo farm. It smelled terrible. I don't know, math, and I want to specifically focus on math, because math was something that did not come naturally to me. I don't know how I've made it as far as I have. My homeroom teacher, who was also my math teacher, her name was Mrs. Blog, and she did these problems of the week. This is before Common Core. This is before like all that craziness. I'm going back. This would have been 1999. Not only being like one of the tallest people in my class because I hit my growth spurt and everybody else was a year younger than me. They didn't really quite hit their spurts yet. So I just felt like this, I kind of felt like this old man. It's weird repeating a grade, but I kind of felt like an old dude. Problem of the week. These problems of the week were difficult. And for somebody who math did not in any way, shape, or form come naturally to before, during, or since, when I would see that paper come across my desk, I just wanted to cry. Because there was a way that you had to solve these. And just for, let's see if we can find one. I think I might have found one. They kind of look like this. So I could probably write something in Python that would be able to solve this now. Right? But back then, like and we had a week to do this. So we would get these on like a Monday, and then we had to have these turned in on a Friday. And if I remember correctly, I think these counted for like a huge part of our grade. I wanted nothing more than to not do these. I don't remember being able to successfully finish any of these, I had to get a lot of help. They put me in the resource room. This is when I went in the resource room. So I went in the resource room, and there they would guide me through every step of trying to solve one of these. And these things were still complete Greek to me. I struggled so hard. So to that end, they kind of looked like this, but there were a lot. I remember them being a lot more difficult than this, right? So I'm looking at this here. This isn't the problem we're trying to solve here today, but I wanted to put this up here because this is kind of what they looked like. You had all this space here. You had to show your work. It was a big deal. So here we are, and I remember doing a couple and. Again, we're going back to Codewars again. So I did a bunch of these, and it was eating me. It was eating me up here. And I was like, what's going on? Why do I feel like I'm trying to climb some insurmountable obstacle? And then I don't know what it was, but it just clicked for me. And I was like, every single one of these is Mrs. Balog's problem of the week. And I need to do 3 of these a day. I can't even begin to tell you how crazy this has been driving me. But finally, it hit me, and I get it, and I get it now. But what's even more exciting is I think I might have solved this one. So let's go through it. Who remembers back to their time in the schoolyard when girls would take a flower and tear its petals, saying each of the following phrases each time a petal was torn? I love you. A little. A lot. Passionately. Madly. Not at all. So apparently the way that it goes is, you got your flower, you got like a daisy or something, right? And each time you pull a petal, you say one of these things. If there are more than 6 petals, you start over with I love you for 7 petals, a little for 8 petals, and so on. It was this right here where it hit me. And I was like, oh, this is where this is it. So when the last petal was torn, there were cries of excitement, dreams, surging thoughts and emotions. So my goal in this determined which phrase the girls would say at the last petal for a flower of a given number of petals. The number of petals is always greater than 0. Okay. So when Mrs. Balog would do the problem of the week, she would seed or hint at like the general direction that you should take to start crafting your solution. She'd throw out a hint. Sometimes she'd throw out 2 if she was feeling especially generous. But what we have here that we didn't have in Mrs. Balog's math class was we have test cases. So we can kind of reverse engineer with these. After I had that flood of nostalgia, I'm laughing because I finally solved one of these. Like in my mind, I finally have solved the problem of the week without too much help. I didn't have to go down to the resource room for this one. I did Google. I did use Google, and Google kind of failed me because Google search is broken these days. So I had to go to ChatGPT and ask it how to do something in a while loop, but I got there on my own. Okay, here's what we're doing. I took notes because when you do these, you're encouraged to take notes so I'm going to show my work. So let's go to my downloads folder here. So in the code itself, in the problem, let's see if can we move this? Yes. And then can we put me on top? Yes. No. Yes. Haha. I win now. I was just like, how do I even start? So I got the pen and paper out and I went right to town. Okay. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And what I'm thinking in my head is that I'm just going to take these numbers, right? And then I'm going to take those values, I'm going to pair them up. So I'm going to pair them up 1 through 6. And that's going to be like my original dictionary. That's going to be what I call upon after I've computed the value based on whatever the test is going to send me. This sample test is only a small subset. It'll send me like, when you actually go to submit one of these, it tries to test for edge cases, so it'll send like hundreds. So the solution that I have to have, it's got to work the first time. So here's 1 through 6. And then I thought, well, okay. And they gave you a little teaser. They're like, okay, well, you know, and if you get to 7, you just have to start back and go back to 1. And, you know, 8, you got to go back to 2, right? Now you break these down into the numbers. So I made a little number line to look at it visually. And I thought, okay. And then I tried, okay, what's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 look like? Okay. What's 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 look like? Okay. So I basically just kind of mapped them all out, and you can kind of see here where I kind of see what I had going on here is eventually, you know, all the different possibilities of these numbers eventually at some point map back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So first we got to declare those values. We got to make our dictionary. So we're going to call this pedal phase. And since this is going to be stored as a dictionary, we're going to call it a dictionary. So dict for short. Okay. And we're going to instantiate an empty dictionary. So we're going to put these 2 little curly brackets here. Okay. We're going to do... So now what we have to do is we have to have the number and the actual dictionary value itself. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Right? P-E-T-A-L-P-H-A-S-E. Okay, cool. I'm also a terrible speller. Just want to put that out there. So there's the empty dictionary. So now what we have to do is we need 6. We're going to need 6 of these because there's 6 values. So now this, and we're going to do these little square braces for the key, and then anything after the equal sign, that's going to be the value. Okay, so let's make this empty, and let's get 5 more of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we give them their proper name, or their proper string. So I love you. No space. A little. A lot. Passionately. I think I spelled that right. Madly. And not at all. And we're going to give them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So that's 1 through 6. Now, let's go back to my notes. Okay. So now we're looking at the notes again. So I just sat there and I just started blurting numbers on the paper. But essentially what I figured out here is that the difference between all of these is positive 6. So add 6 between, so 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 6 is 13, 2 plus 6 is 8, 8 plus 6 is 14, so on and so on. I said, okay, I see a pattern emerging here. So now I have to figure out how to like take this pattern and turn it into a process. Started doing pseudocode. So pseudocode is like where you just kind of write down how you think the loops are going to be. So I said like, okay, well, if the number is like greater than 6, then, you know, then we're going to need to do some math to figure out, you know, where on one of the other number lines it might be. I was thinking to myself, maybe we need to chunk these. So then I started kind of working it through here. And then I had like a light bulb moment right around here when I was like scribbling this down. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I was like, what if we know that like 1, 7, 13, so on and so on, we know that those are I love you. And then we know that 2, 8, 14, whatever, are a little, and 3, 9, 15, whatever are passionate, or are a lot, or passionately. I don't remember which one off the top of my head, because this window's covering the other one, so I can't really tell. But anyway, so I started working these through, and I'm like, okay, well, if I could just figure out a way to just blur all the possible numbers that could correspond with this, I could just put them into the dictionary and call it a day, right? So then all we have to do is grab that number as it comes into the function, and then just be like, okay, is it 7? Yeah, cool. It's this one. All right. Is it, 431? All right, cool. It's 4, right? It dawned on me that that's not the most efficient way to do it, because how do I know what numbers they're going to send me, right? How do I know based on the number that they send me, or like what group it's going to be in? So then I thought, well, I wonder if I could just like embed a function, or if I could like embed some code in the array. So then when we get to the array, it could explode it out. And then I was like, well, that's not going to work, because we got to know the values to explode it out. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we need to know before building out that number list. And that's just not efficient, because if you feed a bunch of numbers into it, it kind of messes with the time and the space complexity, which is some things I learned recently, that your programs have to actually be efficient. So anyway, so I spun my gears around this for a little bit, and I'm getting really frustrated. Like, it's about, at this point, it's like 11:45. It's getting real close to lunch, and I am just like, I cannot believe I haven't gotten to where I want to be yet. You're supposed to like give up after 30 minutes when you do these. You're supposed to be able to do one of these in 30 minutes. That seems to be what a lot of the coder people on YouTube say. But I wasn't going to let this one go. I've decided to myself that I'm going to try to do 3 of these a day, but I have to do at least one. And this is the first one, and I'm not going to let it keep me down. So then finally, I have another aha moment, and I'm like, okay, well, obviously this was generate beforehand, and we decided not to do that. So generate beforehand is out of the question. So then I'm like, okay, the incoming variable, does it fit into one of the groups of 6? And I was trying to figure out, how do I find the groups of 6, right? Do I divide and, find the position of the number in the group of 6? Well, that seems like it's going to be a little bit. How many groups of 6 come before it, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff that has to get figured out, and I could already see in my head that this code was going to be really, 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 really long. Spinning my wheel some more. Oh, what do we do here? What are we doing? What if we just kept subtracting back until we got to one of those 1 through 6? I wasn't entirely sure if this was going to be possible, and I still count on my fingers. I'm 38 years old. I'm going on 39, and I still count on my fingers. So I thought, well, okay, so we know that it's plus 6 in these little voids here, right? So, 1, 7, 13, 19, 25, 31, 37, 43, 49, right? In between all of those is adding 6, increment by 6. Then I thought, well, if you can increment by 6, can we keep subtracting 6 until we get back? Light bulb goes off. So I break out the trusty calculator, because at this point I was getting tired of counting on my fingers. So 49 subtract 6 is 43. Subtract 6 is 37. Subtract 6 again. That's 31, right? And then the next number should be 25, and it is, right? And then subtract 6 again, and you get 19, and then subtract again, and you get 13, and then subtract again. And then you get 7, and I don't need my fingers for a calculator for this, and you subtract 6 from 7, and you get 1. So then I'm like, okay, we have to do a lot with the number 6. So then I started noodling over here, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't really look like much. But I was like, okay, I need to be able to take a random number, figure out where I am in the array, and be able to work from there. Because if I know where I am, then I can write a loop that'll go and get me to where I need to be in that 1 through 6. So I was like, okay, so 104 plus 6, right? So you get 110. So I'm like, okay, there's our plus 6. And then if you take 104 and you subtract 6, you get 98. So I was like, okay, well, I could validate this. Like I was still trying to figure out my placement in the array. Right. I was still trying to figure out like how I get my bearings. Where am I? Where am I in this? I'm moving something around. I'm moving around an imaginary thing, and I have to be able to tell it, and it needs to be able to inform me so I know if I got to keep going or not, if I'm going to hit a wall. So finally I was like, all right, let's do it. So I took that. So I took the 110. So I basically just kept subtracting 6, and ultimately I wound up back at 2. Oh, this is fantastic. So I tried a bunch of other random numbers, and sure enough, you just keep dropping 6 off them, and you wind up back to one of these numbers. I'm like, we're in the swim lane now, buddy. We're in the swim lane. Let's do this. So how do we do that? What I ultimately wound up at was while NB pedals. NB pedals is this up here. So this is the variable that is scoped for this function that when the test calls it, like it does down here, when it calls how much I love you, it feeds that value. So that 7 gets pushed through this little imaginary door here, which we will call NB pedals. And then we process it in the function, right? So anyway, so while NB pedals is greater than 6, NB pedals, basically this here just keeps the subtraction going until it hits the very bottom. Then what we do is we return that. This is the fun part. This is where it all comes together. So we return pedal phase dict. Now, instead of sliding a number in there, what we're going to do is we're going to grab this. Okay. We grab that and dump it in there. So what is this? So what do we got going on here? So we got how much I love you, NB pedals. Okay. And we got our code. Let's take this comment out. Let's keep this nice and tight. Okay. Instantiate the dictionary. Now for the next 6, we populate the dictionary. While NB pedals is greater than 6, keep subtracting until you get down to 1 through 6. So take that number and then just keep subtracting. Then take that same variable, because in this case, the way that we're using variables here, these variables are mutable, so we can change them as we go. So as the Python interpreter goes down, we can change the variable on the fly, which is what we're doing here, in case anyone was curious or trying to figure out what was going on. Okay, so now we know that whatever number we just fed into here, we're going to get one of these 1 through 6. Let's say there's 99 petals on a flower. It should come back to 3, so a lot. So first thing we're going to do, and you can't see it because it's behind me, but there's a little test button, so I can run these first 3 test cases. Bam! Pass the first 3. Test pass, test pass, test pass. 0.4 of a millisecond. Now, let's attempt it against all the test cases. Oh, yeah, look at that. Passed all 103. Look at that. Look at that. We are cooking with fire here, guys. Look at that. Oh, this is beautiful. We're going to go ahead and we're going to submit that. So excited. So, all right. So let's see what other people said. Oh, interesting. I love looking at these because some people have like way simpler solutions. That's all right though. Oh yeah, look at this. Oh, okay, wow. Oh, okay, this guy made it. All right, we found our dictionary pet. Oh, I could have used modulo. Oh, I'm still not entirely sure how to use this. That's all right. We'll figure it out. Because again, I'm gonna be doing these all day. Where's my conditional statement peeps at? Oh, this is cool. Okay, yeah, we got a lot of control flow going on here. All right, so I might have taken a little bit of a roundabout way to get to mine. But anyway, I just wanted to do this because I figured that this was the problem of the week situation, and I crushed it. I guess even though I really slogged it through Mrs. Blog's math class, very unlikely and unexpected tribute to Mrs. Blog. I wonder if she's still teaching math over there at Maple Hill. I hope she is. I hope she sees this. I think she'd get a kick out of it. Anyway, so that was that, people. Thanks a bunch, and I'll see you guys in the next one.